So, Assalamu Alaikum, everyone. God willing, we're going to start with Surah 79. So, let's all seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Surah 79, The Snatchers, Al-Naziat. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. The angels who snatch the souls of the disbelievers forcibly, and those who gently take the souls of the believers joyfully, and those floating everywhere, eagerly racing with one another to carry out various commands. The day the quake quakes, followed by the second blow, certain minds will be horrified. Their eyes will be subdued. They will say, "We have been recreated from the grave. How did this happen after we had turned into rotten bones?" They had said, "This is an impossible recurrence." All it takes is one nudge, whereupon they get up. So the title of this surah is actually, quite scary, you have to say, uh, and I think really it proves to us. I mean, it is about the angels who are also known as uh, here, as al-Naziat, or the snatchers, because when the disbelievers die, the angels basically snatch their souls forcefully, and they go through like a tormenting and a painful experience. And God says, they hit them, they beat them on their faces and on their rear ends, and forcibly commanded to let go of their bodies. And obviously, the disbelievers, are uh, experiencing death. As we know it, the tormenting, excruciating pain of the soul leaving the body, and obviously they don't want to leave because they know what they're gonna go through. At that point, and that's what the title is about. At the same time, it says, and they gently take the souls of the believers joyfully, and that is something that obviously we should all want for us, if we really believe in the hereafter, because we don't want the other alternative. And for the believers, it's a beautiful experience. The angels come and they just invite them to leave their bodies, and it's a beautiful experience. And their soul just exits without going through all of that suffering and pain. Like they don't even feel, that the soul has to go through that experience of being snatched. Um, and then there's other angels that are, and then it talks about that, it says, that are floating everywhere, eagerly racing with one another to carry out various commands. So the angels also participate, in the process of doing things on earth as part of God's plan. And so the angels have specific duties, like driving the clouds, and other types of duties, like guarding certain things, certain aspects of the earth, and their guards in around us, obviously. And then there's obviously other recording angels and other angels. So they all have specific jobs, actually, that they continue to do. So and then so we are reminded again of the day of judgment, that the day the quake quakes, um, it will be followed by a second blow. So this obviously is referring to the end of the world, and this will occur in 2280 AD as we know it. And it's this it's a certain mind will be terrified, right? I mean, imagine, like, not for someone who's never expecting end of the world to happen, and suddenly they start to see all this happen, I mean, this is the worst thing anybody can ever imagine that could possibly happen, right? And they see it happen right before their eyes. Obviously, their minds are gonna be like terrified. I think like I mean, there's really, I mean, the worst possible thing you can imagine, is be like the worst experience. Like imagine it's like the whole world, like we use the expression, the sky is falling apart or the world is falling apart. I mean, literally they will see that happen in front of their eyes. People will see that happen in front of their eyes. So, and they know that what to expect at that point, depending on, how they live their lives. And these were the people that thought that this will never happen, like when they rise up from the grave, I mean, what are they going to say? Especially obviously people who never believed in anything. Um, yeah, um, so this is something that they said this is an impossible recurrence, um, and they thought this would never happen, and how could this happen after we had turned into rotten bones? And you really think about it, obviously, nothing is impossible for God. God created us, and we were nothing, and so for Him to bring us back, it's just as easy. I mean, we see Him revive us every day and night. When we go to sleep, we're dead, and then we wake up in the morning, and then we look at the plants and how God revives the plants and how He reproduces them every day, and it's easy for Him to do it one more time. It's God says He will recreate us by the fingerprint, right? I mean, a fingerprint is so fine, so imagine like if you're recreated back, you'll be recreated in the exact same way that even you have the same fingerprint. Like it's so easy for God to create you precisely back to the way you were, and you can see that from like if you look at it from like a programming perspective, if you write a program, yes, so of course you wrote the program, all the specifications for it, so you can recreate it very easily. I mean, we all believe in cloning, right? I mean, how does that happen? So I mean, obviously, God has put a system in place where He can, rebuild it whenever He wants from nothing, really. I mean, He has the genetic makeup of every creature that He has created, so it's very simple for God to do that. Um, okay, so God willing, I'll continue reading verse 15. It says, "Have you known about the history of Moses? His Lord called him at the holy valley of Thoa. Go to Pharaoh, he has transgressed. Tell him, would you not reform? Let me guide you to your Lord, that you may turn reverent." He then showed him the great miracle, but he disbelieved and rebelled. Then he turned away in a hurry. He summoned and proclaimed, "I am your Lord Most High." Consequently, God committed him to the retribution in the hereafter, as well as in the first life. This is a lesson for the reverent. So, I mean, this I find really interesting, because when I read about Pharaoh and his story, like I never thought like um, I would see someone like Pharaoh um, basically uh, say that he's God, when he's just ruling a country. And surprisingly, I've seen that now, but if you guys know what I'm talking about, but really, I mean, the human being is so arrogant, like God created us, and then with little, worldly power that you have, whether it's money or whatever fame, you think that you are a god now because you have all these things, and obviously when you do that, obviously what you're inviting is trouble and consequences to follow when you're ranking yourself next to God or saying you're God, when you're obviously not, you're just this tiny speck of dust, not even that as compared to God. you're nothing. And it's a blasphemy, real blasphemy. But imagine like how someone can be so evil that's it's such an easy thing for them to do is to set them up and rank themselves next to God. I mean, you have to have a really big ego to be like that, but people can't have that kind of an ego. And um, he disbelieved and rebelled, and he summoned all his people, and he proclaimed that he was God, you know. And consequently, God committed him to the retribution in the hereafter as well as his first life. So this is a lesson. Why is it a lesson for us? Because there will be people in this day and age that will be just as bad as Pharaoh, probably worse, you know. And it's a lesson for them that when they do something like that, I mean, look what he did to Pharaoh and his troops, and they can expect the same. Their legacy will be destroyed, um, and they'll suffer miserably in this world and in the hereafter. And it explains a lot of things. It explains a lot of what I see happening in the world today. I'll spare the details. Um, and then God talks about, so God willing, I will continue reading verse 27. It talks about, are you more difficult to create than the heaven? He constructed it, he raised its masses, and perfected it. He made its night dark and brightened its morn. He made the earth egg-shaped. From it, he produced its own water and pasture. He established the mountains. All this to provide life support for you and your animals. Okay, so here, I mean, God is saying, are you more difficult to create than the heaven? Imagine, I mean, really, when you start to think about it, I mean, if you ever, I mean, if I mean, obviously humans can never build anything like that, right? But I don't even know if there's a comparison or where you would begin to try to even like make a comparison on this because I mean you have these giant bodies. I mean, imagine how big Earth is, right? But with all the heavenly bodies that are out there, every single one of them, they're so much larger than the Earth, and in so many ways. And I mean, obviously, they're extremely huge. They're gigantic, right? And God created them, and He has set them in motion. Imagine if we had to build, let's say, one planet, right? How it would be impossible, and to set it in orbit in a way that it revolves around the sun or something like that, it would be impossible for us to build something like that. Obviously it has to have machinery and all that, electricity and all that stuff, but all of these planets, none of them are powered by anything like that. Same with all the creations that God has created. I mean, he has made them self-sustainable in every way. I mean, even we have these satellites that go up into space. Obviously, they're being controlled with with batteries and all that kind of stuff, solar panels and all these things, right? But but as compared to God's creation, is nothing. But they're so tiny, as compared to like something like a planet, right? And God has set all of them in motion, and He has set them in such a precise manner that none of them deviate. Like He has set a specific speed at which the Earth rotates around the sun. Like we complete a day in 24 hours, and it never deviates from that precise design that God has put in place. Only God can do that. No other phenomenon that scientists can come up with that can ever explain something as precise as this design that God has put in place, right? And God says He made its night dark and brightened its morning. Like imagine, I mean, Earth could be, um, it, designed in such a way that we wouldn't have a night or a day, but God has made it possible. And then says He made the Earth egg shaped. And that is also one of the scientific things that we see in the Quran. And God willing, I'll read the footnote here as well. It says 7930. The Arabic word dahaha is derived from dahya, which means egg. So God specifically used the word egg-shaped, in the Quran to describe the earth, because the earth is not a perfect sphere. And we know that, now based on science. And so obviously this also, this also, we are living in an era of conspiracy theories, and so this also proves to us that the earth is definitely not flat. It's egg-shaped. Um, and we know that from when we go up in space, we can see it. It's so easy. Yet there are people out there still promoting the idea about the flat earth, but the earth is really not flat, and it's really not round either. So it's egg-shaped, but we have that information in the Quran 1400 years ago. So this is another sign from God that, this book is, not lying to us. It's not a fabrication. Muhammad didn't know anything about that, or neither did the Arabs. Like, even as early as as less than 100 years ago, many Arab scholars, considered the earth to be flat, you know, and now obviously they've retracted some of those statements, but these are the statements that came from the Arabs. So it's not like a popular cultural belief or anything like that, or historically that they thought that the earth was like that. And so God says He created all this to provide life support for you and your animals. It's a deliberate design set in motion by God so that He can carry out His whole plan, and put everything in existence. And so God says, God will continue reading in 34, says, then when the great blow comes, that is the day where the human will remember everything he did. Hell will be brought into existence. As for the one who transgressed, who was preoccupied with this life, hell will be the abode. As for the one who reverenced the majesty of his Lord and enjoined the self from sinful lusts, paradise will be the abode. They ask you about the hour and when it will take place. It is not you, Muhammad, who is destined to announce its time. Your Lord decides its fate. Your mission is to warn those who expect it. The day they see it, they will feel as if they lasted one evening or half of a day, or half a day. So, I mean, these verses are very straightforward, but I'll go through, these verses on hell. It says paradise will be presented, hell will be brought into existence. So this verse 36 proves to us that the earth has not been created yet, and it will be brought into existence on the day of judgment. The eighth universe, as we know it, will be created, and it will be farther from God and more chaotic than anything we can ever imagine, and tormenting. And um, as for those who reverence the majesty of his Lord and enjoying the self from sinful lusts, I mean, there's so many sinful temptations that the world is filled with every day, and we're tested with it and every single day. And so obviously the people who can resist them truly are the people that have sufficiently grown their souls. And you can see that um, those are the people that will enjoy paradise, not people with wishful thinking. They're the people who worked hard and truly reverence God and believe in the hereafter, and enjoying themselves from all these types of sins that the world is um, filled with. And then God says, it is not you, Muhammad, who's destined to announce his time. So obviously, it was not Muhammad's mission or his job to announce the end of the world. Um, and so he was just required to deliver the Quran. and God is the one, it says, who decides its fate. And then to the messenger of the covenant, this was later revealed as 2280 AD. And it says the day they see it, it will feel as if they lasted one evening or half a day. Um, uh, so this is really something that we should all be thinking about, is that when the end of the world happens, and we look back at our lives and how long we lived, obviously we will see the reality on that day, where the idea of eternal existence will be in front of us, and then we look at these, our 70, 80, 90, 100 years max of our lives, as compared to eternal life is going to be nil. And I mean, even now when we look back at our lives, I mean, however, I mean, no matter how old you are, like right now, I mean, it looks like nothing, like you just think of all the years, and you're like, where did all this time go? It passes us by so fast. It's an illusion that when we look forward, when we think about it in terms of the years ahead of us, we think like it's a very long time. But once we pass through it and we look back, it's like really, it's like really, it's an illusion. And so we have to really look at it that way. I mean, this life is completely temporary. So we have to work towards our real life, God willing. Um, I need to turn off the heater. Actually, sorry, I'm getting roasted here. Uh, 1 second.
Masha Allah. Great surah and great Quran study. Praise be to the
Thank you.
Lord.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm gonna continue, God willing. Sorry, I'm back.
Okay.
So yeah,
Stop.
yeah, yeah. No, sorry. I just started sweating. This. I turned on the heater.
It was
Okay.
not the heat, it was the day of judgment.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that would be something else.
Well, there will be heat too.
Yeah. Yeah, imagine, I mean, how people will live through that, right? I mean, like, we can't even tolerate, anything above, like, I don't know, 75 or whatever. you know. And then obviously, how would you live where your skins are burning? Yeah, may God, help us. So God, I'll continue reading verse 80. Surah 80, I mean. Surah 80, he frowned, Abasa. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. He, Muhammad, frowned and turned away when the blind man came to him. How do you know he may purify himself, or he may take heed and benefit from the message? As for the rich man, you gave him your attention, even though you could not guarantee his salvation. The one who came to you eagerly and is really reverent, you ignored him. Indeed, this is a reminder, whoever wills shall take heed. Okay, so in honorable scriptures, exalted and pure, written by the hands of the messengers, who are honorable and righteous. Okay, Masha Allah. So the title of the surah is He Frowned, and referring to Muhammad, actually. And this is significant for anybody who wants to follow the Quran, because we can see clearly that Muhammad made a mistake in terms of practicing. Muhammad the man, obviously not the messenger. Muhammad the man made a mistake. So as a messenger, he was required to deliver the Quran, and he made no mistake in delivering the Quran. But Muhammad the man was required to follow Muhammad the messenger himself also. So just like me and you are required to follow the messenger, the messengers are also required to follow the message, and sometimes in following the message that they're given themselves, they can make a mistake in that regard in following the message, because we're all fallible human beings when it comes to us as human beings, right? Because if anybody was perfect, then they would be God. But the human beings, we are infallible and we make mistakes. And we're and so um, basically, he was supposed to pay attention to this blind man because he was eager and reverent, um, and but he was a person who was human being just like me and you, and sometimes when we look at people that are rich and they when we look at them and we think they command more respect and attention, we can ignore people that look maybe that are less privileged, and we may tend to ignore them sometimes. I mean, I don't know what Muhammad would have been thinking at that time, but like maybe they were looking he was probably looking at it, um, from a perspective of like what, I don't know, like it's hard for me to say anything on behalf of him, but really, like, it's very easy to fall in that sort of a position, and he did. But God, made it an example for us to learn from, is to for us to know that, Muhammad was not this perfect entity. uh, he was not infallible, and he was a fallible human being just like me and you. And uh, like the Muslims believe that Muhammad was completely infallible, quote unquote Muslims. And then you have the Jesus, you have the Christians who worship Jesus, and they think that Jesus never sinned, and obviously, that's idol worship, uh, because God is the only being that is completely infallible, and we cannot assign that quality to anybody except God. And so another thing we see here is that this person was a blind man, and it says that even though this person was really reverent, he ignored him, and but he was blind, and obviously he was reverent, and it appears from this reading this part of the story of what happened in history about this person, is that you could be a blind person, you could still be forgiven by God. There is this really sinister concept going out there among people who think that if you by using some, like, really idiotic sort of reasoning and deductions that they have made from the messenger, that they think that if you're blind or something like that, or you don't have something in your body, or something is permanently gone, that you are doomed, basically, which is nonsense, right? Because we see here that this person was blind, and God says he should have paid attention because this person could be saved. Um, and that's another important thing that we see here from this story, that you could be blind, you could be deaf, but you can still be saved. And so, like, we should not, for example, try to judge people based on these things on the outside and think that they will not be forgiven. Yes, if you are a submitter, if you're a believer, to start with, yeah, nothing bad will happen to you. You will be protected by God. You will not suffer through permanent damage. But what about a person who didn't in the past, and they lost as a result of that? You could be living in Satan's kingdom and ignoring God's invitations to redeem yourselves, and you could be making bad choices, and you'd be hit by them as a consequence. And as the messenger explained, if you wait long enough, a lot of those things could not be restorable, because it's your fault by you not following the message, right? But then what happens when you do? Well, when you do, then at that point, no further stuff will happen to you. Like, let's say, you weren't a submitter and you lived a bad life. You were a thief or a criminal or something like that, and as a consequence, you lost a leg or something like that. And then what happens when you become a submitter? I mean, when you become a submitter, then yeah, nothing, no more bad will happen to you. You will not go through further damage, and because you will be protected by God. If you join His kingdom and by leading a righteous life, then God will protect you. You will not even get a scratch. Uh, uh, you know, not even get something as tiny as a scratch. So, but before that, obviously, things could have happened to you. Some of them might have been not restorable, but that doesn't mean that, for example, if somebody is blind or something, that they're doomed, that they should not even care to read the Quran. But that's, believe it or not, is a concept that I've heard like far too many times, which is obviously not in accordance with the Quran. Um, and then it says, this is a reminder, whoever will shall take heed in honorable scriptures exalted and pure, written by the hands of the messengers. So, who are honorable and righteous. So the messengers of God are, for one, it says they're not perfect, obviously in their own lives, but still they are honorable and righteous people. They're not people that are outright spreading lies about God, because those, God says, who are more evil than those who do that, right? So the messengers of God, even though they're fallible creatures in their own lives when it comes to practicing the message, but as far as delivering the message, they don't make a mistake. They don't make lies about God. They don't make false prohibitions. They don't mislead people by their personal opinions against God. And they're righteous and honorable, and they preach from the scriptures written by the hands of the messengers. Um, so which also brings us to Muhammad, who wrote the Quran with his own hand, and then other scriptures also were written by the hands of the messengers. And it says exalted and pure. So the scriptures that God has sent, I mean, obviously they are exalted and pure, but obviously, with other scriptures, we know that people tampered with it. I mean, what the messengers gave to people was exalted and pure. Like, if you're a messenger and you have a job to deliver, I mean, you're not going to inject your personal opinions in it, and you're going to deliver what God sent you to deliver. I mean, if God ever appointed someone a messenger, I mean, how could they possibly dare to do anything like that? That would be, that person would not be a messenger, and they'd be fired immediately from doing that job. So God will continue, verse 17. It says, "Woe to the human being! He's so unappreciative. Um, what did He create him from? From a tiny drop, He creates him and designs him. Then He puts him to death and into the grave. When He wills, He resurrects him. He shall uphold His commandments. Let the human being consider his food. We pour the water generously, then we split the soil open. We grow in it grains, uh, grapes and pasture, olives and palms, a variety of orchards, fruits and vegetables to provide life support for you and your animals. Then, when the blow comes to pass, that is the day when one flees from his own brother, his mother and father, from his spouse and children. Each one of them on that day worries about his own destiny. Some faces on that day will be happy, laughing, and joyful. Other faces on that day will be covered with misery, overwhelmed by remorse. These are the wicked disbelievers." So, God willing, I'll stop here. So, this is really all about like reflection. Reflecting on God's creation, reflecting on your existence, how you came into this world from a tiny drop, and then how God puts us to death, uh, after showing us the two paths, I mean, we can all reflect on that. We can reflect on the fact that, God has created the food, I mean, how does that come into this world? How do we're surviving because we're eating, and God has made it all possible through the mechanism that he has set in place. And, it says we split the soil open, we grow in it grains, grapes and pastures and olives and date palms and variety of orchards and fruits and vegetables. I mean, all these are things that God has set in place. I mean, who else could create anything, like that? I mean, like now, the scientists can change the genetic, arrangement of certain plants and, modify them genetically and stuff, right? Right. But they can create and manufacture like out of nothing a vegetable, for example. They can never do that, but only God does that, and He does it so, I mean, amazing. I mean, he does it so like amazingly. That's the word I'm trying to look for. Is I mean, he does. I mean, his work is immaculate and impeccable. In how he designs all these things. You look at the smell, the taste. The packaging is perfect. In every way, and this is God's design. And you reflect on it to come closer to God, to grow your soul. When we eat, we should think about this. We should consider our food, and when we're reflecting on God, I mean, we should reflect on our creation as well. I mean, these things really bring us back to focusing on the real things. And then it says, then when the final blow comes, I mean, on the day of judgment, that's very important for us to remember that. That on that day, you will not care about your spouse or your children or your mother and your father. I mean, not to say that you don't shouldn't care about them now, but obviously you shouldn't care about them now to the point to influence your decision about whether you want to be with God or with Satan. Because a lot of times in this world, people will choose friends or relatives over God, when it comes to standing up for the truth. And when it comes to, choosing God, a lot of times people will make the wrong choice. I mean, you could be born in a family that worships idols, and then you choose to continue to worship idols, so you can have that friendship and relationship with others. But obviously, based on the Quran, we know that that would be the wrong choice. Because on the day of judgment, none of these people will help us. Everybody will be fending for them, trying to look after themselves and trying to save themselves. Obviously, you can't do anything on that day to change your fate, but regardless, I mean, nobody will care about anybody else, because we came here as individual souls. Before we came here, obviously, I mean, we didn't have these mother and father and sisters and brothers and all these other relationships, spouse and children that exist in this world. This is all part of God's plan to continue this whole system, right? But in the day of judgment, I mean, all of that will be reversed. So on that day, it's just going to be you and God. And so you have to answer for yourself, and you can't say, well, I worshiped idols because of my mother or because of my father or because I wanted to, keep friendship with this person or that person. Really, we have to answer for ourselves. So we should really look at it from that perspective in this world too. Um, and we have to make choices that are right. And we have to stand with God, and not make choices because of our relationship with people, because what really matters is at the end of the day is the reality, which is when you go back to God, you have to answer for yourself. So God willing, I'll end here. And if you guys have any comments or questions, please feel free.
Masha Allah, brother. Quite quick question.
Thank you.
Masha Allah, thank you for the study. Praise God.
Thank you, Masha Allah. So I see a lot of interesting conversations happening on Facebook. I mean, on YouTube. I was getting distracted because I have a big screen in front of me and I can see all of them. It's like hard not to read. Uh, um, so I think one of the things I saw was about the translation. One of the people asked if this is the only translation we should be reading, and I think I kind of yeah, I mean, of course we should be because this is the authorized English translation, authorized English version of the Quran, authorized by who? I mean, of course, it's authorized by God. And so if you look at any other translations, they're all filled with nonsense, um, based on their, interpretations of people, but the Messenger of the Covenant was sent by God to clarify a lot of the things, and he has detailed them and clarified them. And obviously, as far as he his native language being Arabic too, he was a fluent Arabic speaker, and he made sure that he translated it not literal, but more contextual based translation. And so he makes sure that the words, you don't translate the phrases literally, like the verse that says, if anybody thinks that God cannot support him in this world and the hereafter, let him sever his dependence on anything else that bothers him. And so that's like severely mistranslated. And other verses, such as there was a verse in the Quran that says none can grasp the Quran except the sincere, and they translate it as no one can touch it except the pure. So you can see there's a big difference between grasping the Quran and, like, meaning understanding the Quran, but it's the same kind of word as touching, but really it's about grasping, which is like really getting the message of the Quran. And so these types of examples are very common in the Quran, and any translation that you pick up other than the Messenger of the Covenants, and you see a lot of these mistakes. Obviously, a lot of people now have started to copy some of these things without giving due credit to the Messenger of the Covenant. But we know that this is the authorized English version of the Quran sent to a messenger. So this person was guided by God. He was a messenger, and there shouldn't be any reason why anybody would want to choose another translation over a translation that was already written by God's Messenger of the Covenant. But it doesn't have to be in English. One thing, I mean, of course, if you live in a country where you're comfortable in a different language, and there's a translation available in your language now, then you can read that also in your language, because the thing is that the bottom line is for you to understand what's in the Quran. And so if you don't understand English, then obviously there's no point in you for reading in English, if you're not gonna know what it means. But if you read English and you understand it perfectly, then it's better that you read it in English. That's all I wanted to say on that one.
Yeah, yeah. Assalamu alaikum. I also wanted to say, like, why, um, if somebody is a submitter, obviously, this whole term being a submitter came from a messenger of the covenant, right? And he is supported by God and he's sent by God. And the translation is not from him, it is God's authorization. Human beings have no power, or any messenger could not produce any miracle or anything without, obviously, it's God who's running everything. And it just amazes me when people say, oh, I'm a submitter, but I don't believe Rashad is a messenger of is a messenger, or his translation is authorized. Like, people have to first really believe. God says, believe in him and his messengers. So if you reject a messenger and the message he brings, and you pick and choose from different translations while God has authorized this just one, um, you have to question yourself, like, am I really certain about it? Am I putting my own opinion over and above God and his messengers? So God always tells us that his messengers should be supported, meaning should be believed. If we don't believe in the messenger, that's a whole different story. That's fine. Everybody has their own. Nobody can make anybody else a believer or submitter. So, but you can't say when seriously Adib Yaxel contradicts messenger of the covenant and the translation authorized by God. Is he a submitter? Is he a believer? He's not. He's making his own version of religion.
Resistance is coming from the Satan, But when the message is from the wrong source, Satan is gonna stand back and he's gonna, oh, come on, go, go, go. There's no resistance. So when the message is coming from the wrong source, there is no resistance, and people will be like, your companion is along with you, and nobody's stopping you, and then you're gonna follow it like crazy. But when the right message comes in, there's a lot of resistance, and you have to fight those resistance to accept your logic, and your mind will be telling you, yeah, this is right, this is absolutely right. How many times during the day when we live our life, and something that you want to do, but your heart is telling you this is wrong, but you want to do it. It's so tempting. But if you really sit down and you really examine the situation, and your heart will tell you, and your mind will logically tell you, no, this is wrong, but you want to do it. It's that sort of thing.
So yeah, thanks for telling me about uh, the stream. Yeah, I think so. What's been happening, I try to keep an eye on the time because after an hour it has been stopping. But I think what is really happening is like when I start the broadcast, even before going live, the timing already the 1 hour starts. So sometimes it ends before 1 hour, so that's good. But God willing, I plan to find a permanent solution for that. So God willing, this doesn't happen, inshallah, next time.
And mashallah, the translation of this final testament by the Messenger of the Covenant is, these are literally, I don't think anybody can come up with these sentences. This is talking about going back in 80s when we didn't have all those resources, and he didn't have a big Islamic university or a lot of Arabic scholars supporting him. This man he says in one of his video or audio that he would have a big table and have all the translational ones. He will read all of them and try to figure out what the best meaning is. And it was all done by God. And then you read the translation. I have studied, mashallah, with several translations, but this is the best and easy to understand in simple English. That is the whole purpose of the Quran, that you understand. It is not to confuse people. Many other translations actually it confuses, and then you go back and you go to the tafsir and other stuff to try to figure out what does it say, and that even make you further confused and dig you more and more deeper hole into the hadith and others literature. And then the Imam says that the Quran you cannot understand by yourself. You need the hadith to understand. It's all big, like a hurricane stuff that it just sucks you in, which in fact is supposed to make it easy to when you read the Word of God, and God will make it easy for you. In Surah 54, God says, I think it's 4 times that we have made this Quran easy to understand. Are we rejecting God's word? Thank you. I also want to mention this what the Surah AD is. When you think about it, why did God mention this incident that happened? Uh, it's a very, very important incident to understand it because so for those people who are idolizing Prophet against his will, and they come upon it, wonder that he was not, he was just a human being. I mean, if you read the Surah number 18, the very last verse, right before, right after God says that, you know, the seven oceans and the word of God, and then right after that, God says that he's just a human being, just like you, inspired by God to deliver you the message and paraphrasing. So, for a thinking mind would think that, should I listen to the word of God or, I mean, God. And then the way they translated the Quran in the other translations is wherever just something good is mentioned, even if God is not mentioned the Prophet name, they will put his name right in that verse. Many, many other verses where God may be mentioning something else, but they will make it like God's talking about him, where in fact God was talking about something else. But in this verse, God is literally talking about him. As we were doing the cross, I looked through several translations, and not a single one mentioned his name by his name Muhammad. And some of the translation mentioned just says prophet, and I found only one Urdu translation where they put the name Muhammad, but then they glorified his name with Muhammad Mustafa Rasul. I mean, all these titles they put next to his name to glorify him in the Quran as a translation. I mean, that literally exposes your inner, you know, that who your God is. So obviously, Messenger of the Covenant was a man, and many other prophet. Jonah made a mistake. He was a man, messenger of covenant, messenger by God. They made mistakes in their daily life, and this is not the only mistake mentioned. God mentioned him by uh, one of the surah where he's God said, "Why do you forbid something that God has not forbidden, and pleases your wife?" And then another place, God said, "Why do you become fearful when you should only fear God?" And there's other verses like that is to ponder about that, that we are here to obey God basically and to praise God only and listen to the message and accept the message.
Okay. Anybody else has any comments or questions?
There are questions on YouTube
Mm-hmm.
online. If anybody wants to answer, they're talking about
Sure.
one question is about going to masjid where other Sunni people are, where to do
Mm-hmm.
Jummah. So Quran has
Okay.
answered, Masha Allah, 9, 107, 108. I'm gonna read those verses, God willing. It says, Auzubillahi minash shaitani rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. 9107. There are those who abuse the masjid by practicing idol worship, dividing the believers, and providing comfort to those who oppose God and His Messenger. They solemnly swear, our intentions are honorable. God bears witness that they are liars. You shall never pray in such a masjid. A masjid that is established on the basis of righteousness from the first day is more worthy of your praying therein. In it, there are people who love to be purified. God loves those who purify themselves. So that gives the answer to that question. And about Jummah, brother, if you have anybody at home to do Jummah with, you can do Jummah at home. One, even two people can do Jummah. One can deliver the sermon, the other can be, following. But if there is no one, then unfortunately you can just do, you know, pray to God to have a community or somebody, but you can do 4 units of your Zohar prayer, but you definitely cannot go to such masjid. It's like going to a Hindu temple and doing it with them because they are obviously also worshipping to a god, and so are these people because they're not worshiping God alone. They're worshiping other idols beside God. So their prayers are nullified. And why would you be in such a masjid where God very clearly informs us not to go to such a masjid? I hope that answers your question. Solomon or Adam, you have anything to add to that?
Masha, no, I agree with what you said. It's really going to such places. It says in the footnote. Actually, if you want to read the footnote, maybe also.
You can read it.
Okay. Well, I don't have it in front of me. Looks like you
Oh,
have it in
okay.
front of
I will read the
this.
footnote. I don't have the footnote. Like, okay. So, uh, hmm. Hmm.
Okay, I'll read it. I mean,
Yeah,
if you,
I just
okay, you went out of it. Okay, yeah, no
mhm.
problem. I can read it.
Thank you.
So, no problem. So 9, verse 107. Yeah, so it says, in the footnote says, any masjid where the practices are not devoted absolutely to God alone belongs to Satan, not God. For example, mentioning the names of Abraham, Muhammad, and or Ali in the Azan, and or the Salat prayer violates God's commandments in 2:136, 285, 285, 384, and 72:18. Right. So then it says you do not pray in those masjids. You should never pray in such a masjid. So it's clear we cannot, even if you're by yourself and these people are not there with you, and you find a place like that, if it's dedicated to, this kind of idol worship, then yes, you should never pray in these masjids. It's better for you to pray at home.
There is one more question I can answer right now.
Sure.
Um, m- Brother Musliman 19 asking to explain 3356.
Musalman?
Yeah, the Musliman 19 on YouTube is asking this question. Please explain 3356. Solomon, you want to go ahead? Or Adam or anybody?
You want to explain it?
No, you can do it.
Okay. What about 3356?
56. It's about the supporting God's.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, it says this this 3356, it was during the Prophet's life. So you can see that anywhere where in the Quran where referring to Muhammad, when the word uses Prophet Nabi, that refers to Muhammad as when he was alive, right? So I think someone else posted the footnote there as
Yeah,
well on YouTube.
footnote, mashallah.
Yeah, mashallah. So it says Satan used this verse to entice the Muslims into commemorating Muhammad. So it says, you shall help and support him and regard him as he should be regarded. So imagine if you were born at the time of Muhammad and the Quran was revealed, God would tell you that you shall help and support him. Like they had to fight, they had to go to war, they had to do so many other things in order for
And
them
his
to be able to
orders.
practice the religion freely.
And his righteous orders, like.
Yeah, and his righteous orders in doing that, obviously. So they had to do all these things to support him. So if you were alive now and a messenger came, God would tell you to support him, and help him, right? So that's exactly what was told. But Satan used it to trick the people into worshiping him and commemorating him, long after he's dead.
Yeah, and sending
So
some kind of salams and
yeah, yeah.
peace on him. And now there is a whole cult, like it's such a growing thing in Pakistan, like
Hmm.
Ashikane, lovers of Prophet Muhammad. Okay,
So
there is
bad.
a person died the other day who was the biggest idol worshipper. He spent all his life on a wheelchair, a mullah, and he was enticing people like anybody who commits blasphemy, meaning blasphemy, quote unquote, says anything about Prophet Muhammad or is a Ahmadiyya, uh, belongs to Ahmadiyya community or whatever, they are Gustakhi Rasul. So you just kill them. Like people are on a killing spree these days. Any non-Muslim or who are following Ahmadiyya, whatever this guy, and this guy's funeral was the largest probably in the history of Pakistan, and I'm sure that guy died with coronavirus, and I'm sure those all of those followers who's dying to get to that funeral in masses are gonna catch that corona too. There's gonna be a biggest
mm,
outbreak in Pakistan.
mm,
So yeah, these we support after messenger's life. How do we support a messenger? We cannot support a messenger. We can only support the message, right? So after Prophet Muhammad is gone, his job is done. He delivered the message in pristine condition, which is the Quran. Nothing but Quran. He only followed Quran. So we support the message by practicing it. We cannot support a messenger anymore. When messengers are gone, they're gone, right? While they're alive, if somebody happens to be alive in their time, if they become believers, then they support them. Then they go out of their ways to, because in the beginning there are only few believers or submitters, and then messengers need their support by God's commandment, right? It would be the best thing to do to support them, spread the message in any way you can, right? Because you're supporting God in a way. It's not a personal thing with messenger that you would be supporting, because God is supporting them already. MashaAllah.
Yeah, mashallah. I just want to quickly say that, yeah, people will use the words and trick them into believe something else. I'll just kind of go through and read the words and in Arabic, and you will see the differences. So the word says, "Inna Allah wa malaikatu yusalluna ala nabi." Inna Allah and wa malaikatu is the messenger, the angels. Yusalluna ala nabi. Nabi is the name prophet. Yusallu is means supporting. It comes from the word salat. You salat, you're contacting with God. So yusalluna ala nabi ya ayyuhallazina amanu yusallu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. O you who believe, you shall support. I'm sorry, hold on. Okay, so if you see this, you salluna. This is the you, and if you go back to verse number 43 in the same surah, and God is talking to the believers. هو الذي يصلي عليكم وملائكته ليخرجكم من الظلمات إلى النور وكان بالمؤمنين رحيما. هو الذي, he's the one. يصلي. It's the same root word. يصلي. In Arabic, the grammar is Rabbi, my Rabb, Rabbana, our Rabb. So at the end, when you put the little Rabbi, Rabbana, Rabbukum, your Rabb. So these are the grammatical, he, and like in English we say he, she, it. So these are the Arabic form of yusalli, like you. He's the one who will lazi yusalli, that he's the one supports you, alaykum, tumko, like you, wa malaikatu, and the angels. So in a similar way, if you gonna say that if uh, inna Allah wa malaikatu yusalluna ala nabi, that if yusalluna is mean darud, then you have to make a durud for every believer, because it's the same root word he used for the prophet and the same root word God is using for the believers. So we need to make a durud for every believer. Basically, I mean, there's nothing hidden in this. Surah verse number 43 and 56. Read them side by side. It's the same thing. There's no difference. MashaAllah. Thank you.
yeah, exactly. And God says that, the believers, they never make a distinction among God's messengers, So when you see these people, sending salutations to Muhammad, with the exception of Muhammad, and they fail to do that for all the rest of the prophets, and they're also clearly violating that commandment as well by making a distinction. And they don't say it for Moses, for example, or Jesus, uh, the same way they do for Muhammad. I mean, they don't. I mean, forget the messengers. I mean, they don't do it for God. When you mention
No
God, they don't.
praising for God.
Yeah, yeah. When you mention God, they don't do anything. You know, when as soon as Muhammad's name comes, like they start like putting the hand on their chest out of respect, and they start you know kissing their own hands and stuff, and all this funny gestures and idol worship clearly.
Clearly, idol worship has
Yeah,
become the top idol worshipping country right now among Muslims. Like, I've
Yeah,
seen anything worse than that. It's just too much. It's a new trend about Ashikane Rasul. Dekho. If anybody kills in the name of, one guy goes to a bank and killed the security guard, shot down the bank manager, and said he was an Ahmadi. Uh, so people put him on their shoulders and were praising him. Things like that are happening, like then calling him Ashikane Rasul. Like, what is this garbage? What is Ishq of Rasul? What is it? If a person, while there is no mentioning of God whatsoever, I mean, this is even worse than, what else can I say? Just, you know, it's just there is no resemblance to Islam
I said
anymore.
it's worse than worshiping Trump.
Yeah, all kinds of weird personalities are being worshipped these days, so who knows?
Yeah, I mean, for anybody who wants to, honor a messenger or a prophet, the best thing to do is to follow the message, that they stood for. Muhammad's entire life was dedicated to worshiping God alone, following a message. He wasn't sending salutations to himself and praising himself. He was only praising God. So why would you want to be different, I mean, if you truly love him, then you should be like him in worshiping God. He wasn't sending salutations to himself, to his family. He was just worshiping God and just praising God his whole life, and he wasn't following obviously his sayings. He was following the Quran, and so that's what we should be doing as well.
yeah. You see a lot of those songs where, like Indian item songs, and they will dance and they will mention God's name, and there's no jalus, there's no people protesting. And here somebody even says something, not even a song, and then you see people are coming out in mass crowds and protesting and all that. I mean, then you can see anybody, you can ask someone, who doesn't know anything about religion, and you can ask them who is their God. This person will answer you correct, who's their God. And I'm not going to mention it, and their hearts know that who is their God, and definitely it's not the Lord of the universe.
There, one mullah, which is very is prestige in Pakistan, and he was talking the other day about all the whores and all the how people will be drinking alcohol in
Oh,
heaven, and God will be serving alcohol to believers himself serving.
oh my God.
Astaghfirullah, what is wrong with people? Oh my God, they don't even understand what blasphemy is. This is blasphemy. They say anything about God, they make up things and say about God. That is blasphemy. They have taken blasphemy so much out of context that blasphemy is anything, saying anything. This cartoon business in France and all that. Like, I am, you know, really like what happened to people. They make movies on Moses, Jesus, in Hollywood, whatever, make cartoons on them. They don't care. You make a picture about Muhammad, all hell is broken out.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, yeah, they never protested about a picture of God, right? There's
Mm,
so many pictures of God, like,
yeah,
you know,
God. What about God? Jesus being a God,
mm,
right? Is it that's God calls it such a blasphemy that the description in the Quran is like the mountains are about to
Hmm.
you know
Yeah,
crumble. This kind of blasphemy, that is blasphemy.
and
But
I
they're
mean,
not worried about that.
yeah, and I mean, I think like cartoon is another level, right? But they don't even show anybody as him.
No.
Like when they make movies about Islam,
Yeah. The
they will
reference is
not
so
they will
high.
not be a real person, playing Muhammad, for example, in the movie.
Oh yeah,
They,
that would be a
they'll kill him.
yeah, they will kill him. That would be the biggest blasphemy, of course.
Yeah.
Anyway, they're beyond because there is so much lack of education there that it's a pointless. Like
Mm.
nobody has a clue about Islam. Nobody. All right then. Okay.
I think, like this brother said it is madness. That's exactly what it is. Idol worship is really nothing but madness, obviously, right? Because you have to be mad to go choose hell over over beautiful oh yeah. I mean, these people are really, they're just clowns, appointed by Satan to
Yeah.
mislead people. Yeah.
Exactly. Just to
Mhm.
they and this such perverts, like such perverted way of how they describe heaven. You know, it's
Mm.
just nothing but hooves, and they don't ever talk about God's magnificence or God's how would how would we even like what it means to be close to God.
Mm.
What it means to grow your soul. There is nothing, no talk about
Yeah. Yeah, and even they when they talk about the spouse in the hereafter, they speak about it in a very like a polygamous sort of a way, like the minimum the minimum number of spouses you will have is like 72 and virgins and
Yeah, because God
really
God talks about
mm,
serving them will be the
and more of
servants
servants.
like pearls, right?
Hmm.
We don't even know how they're gonna, what kind of creatures those are gonna be, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So whole idea of a hure and this and that and
Yeah.
female, they will look like that, and oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, when God says there will be immortal, I
yeah,
don't think that they will be like real human, like
yeah. It would
that
be
kind of.
like something very amazing serving them.
Hmm.
Some
Hmm.
entity created by
Yeah.
God will be at their service all the time. That's all.
Yeah. Well, it could be all artificial intelligence.
Yes, well, obviously, it
Yeah.
won't be artificial, obviously. It would be very,
Hmm. Hmm.
very profound, mashallah,
Hmm.
but created
Yeah.
by God, whatever that is.
Hmm. Hmm.
It could be a pearl serving you. Who knows?
Hmm.
It can do that,
Exactly.
right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So it could be a water
Yeah, because
fountain.
their descriptions are allegorical, right? So.
Allegorical.
Hmm.
Everything is allegorical about heaven and hell.
Hmm.
Subhanallah, thank you, God, for sending among us a messenger to clarify things. He's a clarifying messenger, praise be to God. While for all the others who still have any doubt about Idi, please, do some research and compare um, the authorized version of English version of Quran with any other book, and first come to certainty that God did send a messenger or not, and then go from there, inshallah. That's my only advice.
Okay, so I guess if we don't have any more comments or questions, uh, then we can end, God willing, and then our next study, God willing, will be on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific time, mashallah. And our teacher is going to be Ali. Is it Ali? Are
I
you?
think it's me.
Oh, it's your turn? Okay, yeah. Inshallah,
Mm-hmm.
you. All right, perfect.
Okay,
So,
Assalamu alaikum.
all right, God bless you all.
Assalamu
Assalamu alaikum.
alaikum,
Thank
everyone.
you. Assalamu
Assalamu
alaikum.
alaikum, Masha Allah. God bless you all.